What's going on, guys? Apex right here. Today we're flying the B2 Spirit Bomber. Freewing did an absolute stellar job on this plane, guys. I feel like this plane does not get enough credit. The scale detail and the avionics they put into this plane is pretty awesome, I could say. Here on the bottom, of course, we have our scale landing gear. I mean, from the amount of wheels it has, the placement of the wheels, the way they retract, the gear doors, the whole bit. I mean, even the landing light here is literally one to the real thing. Pretty cool stuff. And one of my favorite pieces of RC planes is the lighting. We do have navigational lights on each side of the wing, top and bottom, red and green on each side with a white strobe, which is pretty freaking cool. So if you ever fly in a low light situation, that'll look pretty sweet. And of course, to make this flying freaking polygon fly stable, just like the real one, Freewing has put a control box on the inside here, and the setup is super easy. You literally just plug in your channels 1 through 6. That's it. Basically call it a day from there. The rates you don't really touch. The thing you only really do towards the beginning is kind of adjust like the clamshells and the horns to make sure everything's right, and that's pretty much it. The rates stay at 100%, and even with that said, everything handles pretty easily. The only thing that I adjusted is I did the rudder rates, so that way it doesn't get too squirrely on takeoff. The plane can assemble or disassemble pretty easily. You have your 2 screws on each side of the wing for your with your white ribbon cable that you usually see on most jets. And something that is different with the wing screws on this is that, I'll go ahead and show it on here, is that the screw kind of stays in place once you unscrew the wing. So it kind of helps with misplacing the screws. If you ever lose them or anything like that, you can literally just keep them in place and they'll stay right where they're at. Something kind of neat. So one important thing about taking off at the B2 is try not to have a really long rollout whenever you're taking off, because what happens is during a long takeoff, the plane will kind of take off on its own just enough to get the wheels off the ground, and then because of the aerodynamics of the drag, it kind of pulls itself back down and it bumps the nose wheel, and that causes a whole catastrophe of effects. So you don't want that. So just kind of keep your thumb on the elevator just a little bit to make sure it doesn't kind of dip on you whenever you take off. The control box gyro that they have pre-installed on this thing does work pretty well. I mean, usually in any kind of wind condition that I've flown in, it does feel pretty stable for the most part. The hard part is when it comes to landing, especially in heavy crosswind. I usually try not to fly in heavy crosswind because of that, because it just begs for way too many problems, because we have no vertical stabilizer on this plane. But overall, I mean, it handles pretty easily. It kind of just flies around like a glider, and it goes pretty slow. I get about maybe 4 to 5 minutes of flight time or so, because you can fly with pretty low throttle for the most part. I know loss of orientation is a big deal when it comes to jets like this. The best advice I could give is always try to, keep it close to where you can physically see it a lot easier. Don't let it get too far away from you. But if you do find yourself losing orientation in the plane, just stay calm, kind of move the sticks around just a little bit, and pay very close attention on how it's behaving to try and recover what orientation you're at. Or of course, you could always paint it up in some fancy Skittle colors. So now we'll come around and try to do a loop with it. It does do some fun stuff. One thing you definitely do not want to do with this is go way too fast. So like, don't do any crazy like high-speed dive passes or anything like that. You can kind of see what happens if you go too fast with it on the Cletus McFarland channel. I think he ended up putting a turbine on it or something like that, and the whole thing just freaking fell apart whenever he went too fast. But going too fast can also make the gyro oscillate as well. But of course, if you did your own gyro setup, you could probably fix that. Turn it over and fly it inverted. It feels almost the same inverted. It still feels pretty simple to fly, other than the elevator being reversed. Now, let's see how low we can get this thing now. As you can see, it does fly pretty smooth. The gyro that it comes with does a pretty good job of keeping the whole thing stable. Look at that. Good vertical performance for the most part. It will slow down eventually. Oh yeah, that stall test. Forgot about that. Let's do that. Let's get it up nice and high. Let's go a little higher. Alright, elevator is throttle is off. Holding the elevator now. Still holding it, still holding it, still holding it. So it just kind of gracefully falls down. A little bit of wing drop, but nothing too terrible. All right, the landing part. This is the tricky part. So something to note is, of course, when the gear is up, it's super aerodynamically smooth. But you do feel a big difference with the gear down. It does create a bunch of drag. So I usually use a little bit more throttle when I'm flying around with the gear. So the goal with this is when I bring it in, you want to try to be as easy as possible. Do not have too high angle of attack. Make sure the mains touch first. If you touch that nose first, it will bounce and you will have damage. And nobody likes damage. There we go. So once you touch down, you let go of that elevator. Otherwise, it'll freaking start bouncing all over the place. And you don't want that. But overall, a super cool, nice looking, super duper cool plane. Thanks for watching.